What up, nerds? I have so much to get into today. It is the 22nd of April in the year of our Lord 2019. Welcome all of you Easter worshipers coming to, well, here at the 4256 Production Center, which is 17 levels below the Denver airport, if you could believe those ne'er-do-wells in Whiskey and the Surfer. What a weekend. Hopefully your Easter was amazing. Hopefully you had some time to get together with family and bond and go to church and mass. And did you reaffirm your baptismal promises? Did you reject Satan and all of his lies and all of his works? And when you say I reject, do you, in the same way you say I believe, in the same way you say I reject in your fullness? And if you answer those questions, then there you went. And hopefully you had a great brunch, or however we continue to celebrate our day. We had a barbecue here in Denver, and then I was at the Bohemian Beer Garden last night. It was awesome. Super fun, and glad to be here now in front of you with a rundown sheet that Ted Kaczynski in his worst day. This looks like it's been written by Ted after a bender if they took his hut away and he had nothing to live in. Let's start with an origin story, everybody. Think about this, that we have, let's say, 30 candidates. Let's just use that number. 30 candidates running for office, okay? And they are, why that many? Because if you win, you don't go to jail? Is that the game? Are we all, is this the new reality show? Everyone's going to jail unless you become president. You get to save yourself for 4 to 8 years, or whoever, somebody comes up with a ruse to take your whole, house of cards down, or who knows at this point. I mean, are we going to basically live the Running Man? Are we going to get to see that in real life? Are we going to have a 24/7 OJ trial culture that just drives opinion and division and all of those things that, well, march the drumbeat of an idea moving forward? So if all of a sudden, how about this? You have 30 people running, and all 30 people are saying, Orange Man bad, must impeach, wild left-wing, impossible to finance ideas, okay? And they're marching forward with that. The overloading of the populace with, what do they call it? Trump fatigue, I guess, where, if you overload something, you're like, God, do we have to even hear this anymore? Well, we'll vote for anybody else as long as you change the channel. I mean, and that's, in a grander sense, that's the thing. You overload the narrative with too much, and people are like, gross, enough. The people who, the elderly, I'm not that far away from it. Those folks who, take in their news feed from whichever side they're taking their news feed in, and they have their favorites and the ones they love and the ones they hate. It's the same wrestling that we all get to experience, except for them, they grew up with a time where they got to see, Walter Cronkite, and they got to see Johnny Carson, and they got to see Jack Benny, and they got to see Jack Parr. They got to see, before TV went weirdly weird in the late 70s and early 80s, they got to see people be truly entertaining and truly give the news, well, in as much as real as it was then as they believed it. Breaking news flash. And they had to use a film. I mean, they had to go through some vetting before you got to see it. I'm sure whatever manipulative message in there was completely ironclad and ready to go as they marched it out. So nothing's changed, except how, unfortunately, if you take in this information with like oh my God, this guy, we have 12 years, no one's allowed to, that kind of, why are we doing this to people? Think about that, like really ringing the bell of destruction in the end. It seems just so, ugh. You already have a water-based creature that is unaware of its own inner workings, operating at what they say at a, unconscious programming level 97% of the time if it's working well, and then you overload that with a divided media, bad food, shit public education, and maybe healthcare. If you kill yourself, slaving away at a job, if you didn't figure out that this is all supposed to be an art piece, and in your living of an art piece, how do you design the facets of the art in which you're living? If they don't know that, then the origin story that they start from is, I don't know, man, this must be real. And they watch the news and they're scared, and that inner anxious energy works within them, and then they find themselves in a state of unease, which then puts them in a state of dis-ease, and then they either enter further into a system where they're going to be, fleeced for their money over bad decisions, either for reverse mortgages or scam to spam calls and, identity theft and all of those things that are there that we're so focused on telling lies about one side of the aisle or the other that we're not protecting babies and we're not protecting the elderly. We're just marching towards a system where the state will decide that, well, you're either not worthy of being born or you've been around long enough. And that should be something that's concerning to all of us. So imagine an origin story of somebody who wasn't great in school. Add the greatest story you can do and the worst story you can do, but they have no idea that the information coming to them from their TV is literally programming. They're not aware. So they're taking that in their reality, and that is their origin story as they go about, and they repeat the talking points that their favorites and their people that they resist against are pushing forward. So, look at the casting involved. I love the Vince McMahon. I love to say that Vince McMahon is booking this presidency, that, that all of these big moves that make us laugh and bombastic and the win after win after win. And this guy's a good guy, but you've been calling him a bad. Every facet of storytelling, of movie, of narrative, it's there, and it's there in a 360-degree sphere. So as we all look into it, we're getting our own version of it, which is amazing in its own right, because you get to then experience it like you're in it, or experience it like the show that's happening in front of you. So if you have 30 people saying the one thing, and all of a sudden they lead a narrative where this person that they've been up against, this is it David versus Goliath, or the guy with the Lilliputians? Who is that one where they tied the guy down on the island? Whatever version of that you want to make, it's happening. 30 people all marching together, 12 news sources repeating the 30 ad nauseum, saying one thing instead of one candidate. 360 views of 30 candidates, and then down to 15, down to 7, 8. We have a couple time with it, and it's just eyes on, eyes on, eyes on. But how are you looking at it? Are you looking at it? Where does your origin story start in your belief in all of this? So if you have Adam Schiff out there and you're like, I don't see how anybody can look at this guy and think that he's not acting. Some days he's on camera. You let that dude let it rip. I've heard some of those longer 3-4 minute clips. When he's going, he is in it. He is telling you the truth. Because for all we know, and we do not have the mind-reading ability yet publicly released to figure out what is the motive of somebody to go on camera and say the things that they're saying, if there's information out there that seemingly is so evident that contradicts what's being said in such a truthful, forceful manner. Unfortunately, everybody's starting from their different place of knowledge. So all of these people who, you may be going, this guy's lying and they're saying this and this. For all we know, the truth that they know and understand reality different. So when you have in this case, when you have a extreme radical Islamic terrorism that kills and turns hundreds of Christians, and I don't know which denomination they were. I haven't read the story. I haven't seen a bit of video because I shouldn't have to. Because I shouldn't have to hear the words of somebody who I don't know what their story is and why they even believe that they think they're telling the truth anymore when they're just there to sell shit. So I can just read the words in the same way we're supposed to read the word, right? And have that word pierce your heart so much that the word would open up your mind and you would be able to see and understand life differently. And my origin story, and as soon as we come back from this, I'll tell you the origin story, and I'll tell you how I've turned the movie of my life into a Nicolas Cage comedy. So that's it. Iron Brigade, everybody. I'm John Toll. Enjoy your simulation, because as we say always, what other choice do you have? What up, nerds? We're back, and I'm going to tell you a story about an origin story. So instead of, how about the origin story that as a person of a full, complete faith, that as you find yourself in every single situation, you should find yourself in action, being the best model of faith you can be, so you can then spread your faith through your very actions, which before we had a language, both verbal and written, meant a lot to people in a matter of survival. So I pray that everybody's actions around the world is loving to thy neighbor and embracing different cultures and different beliefs and different origin stories themselves, as you think that one side is better than another, and vice versa, and all of the lies, and who's coming from backstage next, and a chair shot, and I can't believe they distracted the ref while nobody's looking, and how did they not see the illegal object come as easily as explained. So you can be like, all right, well, I watched this fat comedian, has to be on camera. I don't know. That's whatever your version of where you think I've started all this from. I will tell you. I'll be okay. You could take it all the way back to I grew up in the Bay Area, thrash kid, college athlete, played baseball. Okay. And one of the things that I've learned about as, you realize that you're not going to play baseball the rest of your life, and you realize that the game is going to continue on, and the game is going to change. And amazing that as a person, I spent my whole life, I could, as they say, I could rake, as they said, and worked day in and day out, 6-8 hours a day. That was different. It was that and listening to metal. That was the only thing that was happening in my reality, and going to the gym and then trying to jog so I could stay under 200 pounds, which in my frame and my ability to not stop myself from eating Oreo cookies seemingly is impossible. So as the game moves on beyond us, as life moves on beyond us, as our loved ones, our pets, the very moment, the way society treats itself, everything is in a state of change. And so that if you practice the way you play, and then you play the way you practice, which was how you played, you were all there, you were all in, and if you gave it all you had, then the end of it was just what the end was. And if you were fully there, then you should have no regret as something changes. And so, it's one of those things where my last official college at bat, I got beaned. With we were down by way too much in a playoff game, and I think we had a runner on second and third, one out. And I took one off the shoulder, and that's funny to me because that's something that we practiced at Chabot Junior College, where it'd be cold as fuck, and they'd be like, well, you just got to learn how to roll into it, take it, and if you learn how to do it, it doesn't hurt if you do it the right way, because you only have to give the appearance of being bean so you can get on base. And so the guy ran one up and in. I just, give it a little, sometimes you really need to get on. And so maybe you crowd the plate. Maybe you're up in the box. Maybe your normal stance is a little more closed off than you would, and then instead of striding straight towards the pitcher, maybe striding more towards second base, which brings your body over, and then the pitch is going to ride up and in. Bonk! Oh my God, I can't believe I've been hit. Oh, the horror. And I trot my ass down with a bat that, is that an official at bat? It's the same as a walk, isn't it? So my college career ended on a walk. The at bat before that, as a person who I had the worst hitting season, they called them atom balls, where you would hit it right at them. That's how something. And if I got a hold of it, it would never come down. And just every ball in the gap was caught and line drive. Great hot bat, hop, you name it. And it was just one of those things where it's like I was so used for things being awesome, and all of a sudden you're experiencing the game with every bit of bad luck or lack of preparation or whatever it was that I was experiencing as a player playing a game. But in the playing of that game was my whole identity of what was going on in life. So if you had a 2 for 3 life was great, I'm going to go eat a pizza. You were 0 for 5, 2 strike, I'm going to go eat 2 pizzas. This is usually how that went. But in this case, I got my last official at bat, sacks juiced. I think we're down by, 11, 12 runs. Guy win it. I got my hands inside of the ball, and I only learned how to do that because Kiko Garcia of Orioles and Phillies World Series fame owned a batting cage that was maybe a quarter to a half mile from where my wife and I grew up, and I would work there, and I would be there for hours at a time, and hitting off the iron mic machine that threw the ball instead of just shooting it out of the wheel. And Chuck Billy from Testament was there hitting softballs one day, and I just sat there. I remember I sat there and he was hitting, and he just looked down at me. I just laughed, and he just was, what? And I was like, oh, man, you're great at metal. He just laughed. It was funny because that dude is like the best dude. And you would see him at the mall. You'd just see him. He was just, it's the Bay Area. You just see people like that. Deliver a pizza to the singer of Exodus. You're like, what the fuck? Mind blown. Again, back to the origin story. So I leave the game with great satisfaction that I had worked my ass off to get to that point. Opposite field, grand slam, the swing that I taught people how to use. That now, guess what? The game's changed. We used to talk about coming down on the baseball, creating backspin, and watching that thing climb out of the park. And you know what? If you had your bat through that plane and you made contact, it was not coming down. That ball would go forever, in as much as you were able to throw the bat head down. And now they're talking about a long looping swing and an upswing to make contact, which is how Mark McGwire used to hit. So growing up as watching the Bash Brothers play, you'd watch Canseco rocket these balls out with the backspin, and you'd see McGwire looping it under it. And, Canseco's would be 390 in the gap, and some of McGwire's home runs would be 383, just over the outstretched mitt of the... Well, this is going to be a longer segment than I thought. Can I break down the next 20 years in the next 4 minutes? Yes, I can. So what I'm saying is, live your life in a way that you are so all in, okay? If you have a pet, love your pet so much, because when it's going to die, you're going to know you did everything you had with a loved one, with your career, with whatever you're involved with. If you're fully there, then you should have no regret in the experience. Does that make sense for you, those of you who are engaging in this show? So I started to learn about origin story. You didn't know I used to program computers, and as much as I love to sit and noodle with a guitar and figure out why a riff works or why it doesn't work, or why when it does work and you show it to other people and they finally hear it in a song, you don't even have to say anything because you look around the room and they're feeling it because the song's so good. Does that make sense? It's not a sense of, okay, well, it should work out because of the time signature X. It's no. This came from a place of, how did you feel when you first went to a hardcore punk, a metal show, when it was like the energy in there was something that you had never experienced, and now using just riffs or whatever, you can create the same thing. So I get into computers. Input, output, does that sound like what we talk about here in the matter of certainty? Good information in, great information in, great information out. And so as a program that runs like a program is coded, you can only does what it does, okay? So from that, I'm fascinated by artificial intelligence and their ability to move us now from a data economy to a prediction economy. And now as a predictive economy, we know that it's important to overload the emotive data because we need to continually improve the AIs as they go out and get information. And I don't know where they are in that situation, but I can matter of fact that if I was the first person to create a computer algorithm that could go out and get something, if I was anti-religion or anti-God, I might have a robot to go out and find whatever was there that would bolster my opinion. What I gather is that they have brought back the presence of God as God is around us, because if the truth has the ability in ones and zeros, or in this case in quantum computing, where everything is looked at in the manner of possibility until it's observed and then it's fixed into place, is that not any different than you being in a place and in your belief, in as much as you believe that you are operating in your faith for the good of others and you align with God? It's like being, like a 120 plug. What's the one, like a plug you plug into the wall, that's the one power, and all of a sudden you've got the power of the washing machine with the bigger thing? That's faith in action. And so are you there when you're actually engaging in the truth of how you're experiencing all of this? And if you're all there, then you should not have any regret. We're back, and as God is my witness, I will get to the point. The point is that if you're in, decision control of your environment and how you operate in all of this. And what led me to that decision was a coin, a St. Jude prayer coin that said, grant me the, it was like, grant me the mercy for the decisions I make every day. And you're like, oh shit, your life is a reflection of your decisions, in as much as you trust yourself when you make decisions. Does that make sense? And then so you have the patron saint, St. Jude of lost causes. And so what if you're in a place where you can't even trust yourself to make a decision and you've determined to be that, well, then let's find certainty at, having a St. Jude devotion. For those of you who pray the rosary, you can add that little St. Jude piece at the end, okay? And, there you go. St. Jude, martyr apostle, relative of our Lord Jesus Christ, Mary and Joseph, pray for us. There you go. And that's the guy who's there for the worst causes. I start to get into older texts. I start to get into, reading about AI and how AI works. And you can, venture to guess that as, our computers, well, as we cyborg in, as we move towards having the computer chip inside and becoming a blended species using this technology from outside and then engaging in humanity with adopted tech and then tech with adopted humanity, and then how, completely humanoid versus the rights of a clone of that, or the rights of an AI version of that, the rights of a digital version of that, the rights of, so we don't know where all of this is going. You can look at the fact that how, if the conversation in the colleges is, there's hundreds of things you can be, how about that, then seemingly then in the future that conversation is going to be had as well, but it's going to be a tech version, a humanoid version, an otherworldly version, a different plane version of understanding, each with its own origin story. And if you knew the ultimate origin story, would you then be having a different experience? And then do you have that origin story? So as a person of faith, I was very interested in how faith was going to interact. I want to see how the Bible is going to interact with AI in the futurism and a future, I guess, a predictive economy, and the, how valuable the truth is going to be, and humans engaging in their utmost best for the good of everybody. So, and that should be something that we're all doing on our phones all day, and having this, like we said, round experience of, humanity at its best. For those of us, the faith, we love to share the faith using the word in the same way God shared his word with us that got us here. Okay, so not everybody's in that world. Some people are like, yeah, man, strap another fucking piece of dynamite to the back. This is going to be dope. I don't know how somebody gets there. I don't know how somebody gets conned into that, or it's their idea, or I have no idea. And I don't have their origin story, so we couldn't guess. You see the end, and you could work backwards, and you go, well, that's some interesting decision making. Okay, so is there a point in all this? Yes. So then as I learned that you learn about AI, and then you understand that as humans adapt to the tech, what's going to be important for us is, much like a computer, it's how much RAM you have as a human, how much memory you have, how much capacity for information you have. And as you do that, and as you understand and strip down how you live your life to engage in information as it is, you're getting a different picture of information than people who are taking it in as fear. So that's just a matter of fact. And I was like, okay, well, how do people work on their, when did they start working on their memory? And then you go back and you're learning, and this is where I talk about, I'm a Nicolas Cage rabbit hole of what you've learned and how that leads to the next thing. So I'm seeking for information on how to improve your memory, and you're like, well, what did they do back in the school of the Stoics? What did they do back in the Platonic era? What did they do in the Neoplatonic era? How did Plato differ from Socrates, differed from Aristotle on this matter of memory? And what you learn is, or what I learned, and I got this from a book, Henry VIII, the guy that, I'm not good at this part of history, from all things remembered, that dude killed that dude, okay, and all the bad things he did. There was a guy who his job was to teach Henry VIII's kids. Not that, you think your parents' school meeting is going to be rough. Imagine having to stand tall before that dude. He's like, oh, I'll be there after I kill this next one. So I hope you have a good report for what we're learning. So that guy wrote a book on teaching. I think it was written in 1299. And it's written in crazy text, and it's old-timey words, and it takes a lot of time to go through, like, why is he saying that word, and what is its meaning is. And so he, in this manner of improving a student's memory, he talks about what they did in the Platonic schools, I believe. I may be wrong. It may be the Aristotelian schools. But it does not matter, because what moved forward was back in those Greek days, when they were accepting students that were anywhere from like maybe 7 to 12, they could tell by the way the new recruit walked up, how the confidence that person had. They could judge that kid's intellect just by looking and having a conversation. They would know whether or not that kid had it or not. And if you had it, you got to come in and learn. And if you didn't have it, motherfucker, pick up a sword or break rocks. Because that's what your options were if you couldn't get into that school. So, anyways, so I'm reading this. And so like in the capacity for memory, they talked about how they had this innate ability to, have a great memory, to be able to retain information, do logical arguments, and be able to basically exist as a, even though they were younger, they had like an adult version of a brain, basically, and as they could engage in truth. And then they talked about philosophy, and then they all, share that information. So here we are in 1299, Henry VIII's teacher's writing this book, and he says, this is, we only got to this level of schooling because of the schooling that was brought to us and how we were raised. And I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? You're probably looking at me thinking the same thing. And he says basically that there was a few different kinds of students, and if the kid got something wrong and you beat the fuck out of him and he washed out, right, then he was supposed to go carry a sword or break rocks. Okay, so you would try to break them if they got something wrong. It would be such a harsh reaction to something being wrong that they either quit, they got better, right, and then they still got the fucking shit beat out of them as they got better. But who they were looking for was the kid that no matter what happened just could dead-eye straight ahead, and it completely turned all of that off. Okay, so if they were able to basically withdraw torture in the state of learning, and they could take this punishment in a state of just absolute acceptance, and you were the best in your class at that, and you were able to, well, how would you look at that? As psychopathically engage in your schooling? Those kids got to go to college. Those kids got to run businesses. Those kids got to create empires. When that's a little different in 1299 as we look at public education as it is today. So this all comes back around. So from there you basically glean forward that your ability to learn is your ability to turn off your judgment in learning. So when they said that, I don't know, and that's the best, all I know is that I don't know. Who said that? Whoever said that, okay? And they're okay with it. They're not warring internally about having this lack or not knowing or a fear. And so, like I said, with an origin story, if somebody had a different, more foundational idea of what reality is, how would they look at the news? Or how would they make the news for you to look at? That's the question. So these people who are creating this information, in this case, I'm creating this show, and I'm just telling you as a person of faith who've studied Ramon Lull, who was, supposedly the godfather of AI, and he had a systematic way of looking at mathematics in a matter of certainty, that it didn't matter who you were or where you came from or how old you were, that as in the same way you could agree in the mathematical principles that are available to us in all forms, in all things that are just, yeah, of course, 2 plus 2 is 4. In the triangle looks like that. That's a circle. Of course, all of those things are true. So once you all arrive at that same point, then what do you get from that point? You get absolute certainty, and then in your faith, you then engage in text in a matter of, yeah, okay, yes. And so if you read the word, You're going to hear the word, and if you hear the word, it will pierce your heart, and that piercing of the heart will change your mind. So today I was listening to Father Al Lauer. He talked about that when Jesus came back from the dead, he visited the folks on the road to Emmaus. He said he walked around 7 miles with these folks, and he talked about basically how everything he had preached in the Gospels had come true. And what he was saying to those people who were on their way, they were going, is he was just telling them the truth and the passion so much it was piercing their hearts and changing their minds. And then he visited the two women, I guess, and they had the same experience. And basically the idea is that they were going. They were in a state of being, they were in a state of going and sharing the word. And in their going, like we said, the electricity lining up of the washing machines or the wall socket with the washing machine isn't going to work. But they took this information from source itself, like a flame, like a sword, like the truth that just absolutely transformed them. And they got it because they were in the process of doing, not the process of talking about doing, not the process of being regretful for what had been done or what had not. You know why I love the colors in the background? Because you're not sitting there judging it. Like you look at the clouds and you don't judge them, and you look at a mountain and you don't judge it, and you look at the stars and you don't judge them, while you then look at your phone and judge everything else. Does that make sense? I hope so. So, from that place that I gave you the backstory, and if you have any questions, Whiskey and the Surfer at Yahoo, click subscribe here on the YouTube channel so we can get as many subscribers as we need, so we can get a name instead of being, you know, AX blah 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 75 letters that don't mean anything to anybody. After I spent how long telling you to go to / Whiskey and the Surfer? And whose fault was that? Mine, because I didn't double check it, because I just assumed when I opted to want it that it was there. I didn't think that I had to go to my own URL that I kept espousing. And whose fault is that, ladies and gentlemen? Mine. I didn't do the complete work on it, and so here we go. We get our own name here. If 100 people click subscribe, so click subscribe. Keep watching here on IGTV as they may or may not show you what we make. And or follow us on Facebook, because pretty much all the videos go up there, and you should be shown all of the stuff as I make it, or go to weaponsgradefaith.com. And so there you go. So from that standpoint, let's look at what we've experienced through the weekend, where we did, you know, did we have a DNC PR firm who decided to put together this idea of using the term Easter worshiper? And you know, it's funny. Were they worshiping on Easter? Your Honor, clunk. So if you have a, you know, I love the people who have the time and the wherewithal and the idea that says, what if I search Hillary Clinton's Twitter for the word Christian and it doesn't show up? Well, what does that mean? Her use and or never use of that word on Twitter, what does that mean? Only what you believe in your mind, that you mind read into every action she's done in her origin story that had her hire that PR firm to make that tweet that doesn't use that word? I don't know. I'm going to react the same way regardless as if she's sitting on the shitter sending it or this company sending it. I don't think the company was supposed to be known. I don't think it was supposed to be laid out that all of these people that said the same thing are all coming from the same, I guess, company that does that. Or how much does that cost? I would love to know. So again, Easter worshiper, and then you know, is that in the same way that Ilhan Omar says things and people react, you know, they're like, oh, I'm for her, I'm against, you know, whatever, however they're doing, they're reacting. Okay, and so they're bringing stimulus in. We're improving the predictive economy based on that. Okay, so that's an interesting idea. So just like this idea, Easter worshiper, had you heard of it? I hadn't. And what do we know about things that come out of nowhere? Russia collusion? Fake news. Russia Nazi 25th Amendment. Right? See something, say something. Event, catchphrase. 9/11, see something, say something. The Boston Marathon bombing, shelter in place. I don't know about your evidence, if it's real or not, but what you're talking stuff is what they said, not yet to be proven Untrue. That has been said to the American public by an American media company. And as the same truth in the sense of, yeah, they're worshiping on Easter, a not yet, which begets the fact that they are positively believing that the yet is present, but they said it hasn't happened. Not yet. What we're telling you right now is something that hasn't happened. And this is how we're going to tell you that it hasn't happened. Because it's not yet proven to be untrue. So the thing that hasn't happened yet that we believe is going to happen, or the thing that we believe that has happened that nobody... What? Credible evidence. Is this a witch hunt for people who are... I have no idea. What a weird word. If you look at, the connotations of that, are we talking about real witchcraft? Are we talking about demons? Are we talking about people using, I don't know, their mental abilities to fight against the Creator, to fight against religions, to fight against your, I don't know, domestic enemy? And do we have the right and the left here in this country who are organizing with and working in conjunction with their same belief system across a various amount of theaters for one way or another? And is your origin story that they're fighting for the war of heaven? Is their origin story that they believe that every person can be in fear? Hello? Is this thing on? Oh, no. Great. I had my stupid speaker on from the thing. And I always check it. And you know whose fault is that? Mine. And I'll do my best to clean up that audio. Now it sounds a lot better. And of course, also, how many times I've done things where I've been this deep into it and no audio? Think about that. And you just laugh. Just laugh, because what's the decision there time and time and time again? Check your work. Sounds like mathematics to me. So, again, sorry if the speaker was on and it sounded like a frickin' drive-through. We'll do our best to clean that up. So if we know that Easter worshiper is to get all eyes on, why do they always say this religion if something, whatever, and they never say this religion? What are you doing? You're just inviting an arena where somebody to go in and project their mental into it. To then, who is capturing it and for what end? When did they come up with Easter worshiper? How long did they have it in the can waiting for it to be used? Or is this in the most disturbing extreme version of Hegelian dialectic that if you needed the phrase Easter worshiper to make its grand entrance into the lexicon of America, would it be worth spilling the blood of 200 martyrs that you believe are less than your political party? And that is a conversation people are having online. Whether or not that is real, I cannot tell you. But that is what happens when you introduce something that does not exist, like Easter worshiper. And people look at it like Easter worshiper, they were worshiping on Easter. People look at it like, oh, it's an affront to everything I believe. People look at it like, well, that's interesting that they would use that. And so I just lump it into the line of see something, say something, shelter in place, not yet proven to be untrue, credible evidence, and now Easter worshiper, something that was not there that is there now. All eyes on that. You're not thinking about martyrs. You're not thinking about blood being spilled. You're not thinking about revenge. You're not thinking about who perpetrated it, who financed it, where it happened, or forgiveness of any idea. Phrase Easter worshiper to make its grand entrance into the lexicon of America, would it be worth spilling the blood of 200 martyrs that you believe are less than your political party? And that is a conversation people are having online. Whether or not that is real, I cannot tell you. But that is what happens when you introduce something that does not exist, like Easter worshiper. And people look at it like Easter worshiper, they were worshiping on Easter. People look at it like, oh, it's an affront to everything I believe. People look at it like, well, that's interesting that they would use that. And so I just lump it into the line of see something, say something, shelter in place, not yet proven to be untrue, credible evidence, and now Easter worshiper, something that was not there that is there now. All eyes on that. You're not thinking about martyrs. You're not thinking about blood being spilled. You're not thinking about revenge. You're not thinking about who perpetrated it, who financed it, where it happened, or forgiveness of any idea. You are now focused in this word and you are trapped in your opinion of that word while the real narratives march forward in the truth as they go. And so what probably is not really being talked about because it didn't happen to us. Could you imagine having something happen a mile from your house where 400 people were tragically murdered, and I couldn't come on YouTube and talk about it? I couldn't go on Facebook and give you my opinion. I couldn't go on Twitter or Instagram and tweet because the government, in this case in Sri Lanka, shut down social media because they didn't want disinformation to come out. And like we allowed all the airport intrusion of our civil liberties because of 9/11, do we just nod and go, yeah, of course you would shut down social media in the event of that tragedy because you don't want false, fake news, negative information to go out there that might enrage a certain segment of population to be in a state of revenge? That's something to consider. But what is not talked about, while everybody's an Easter worshiper, you're not talking about is that word used just to get eyes on because it's a new thing, and here we are talking about it. Does that make sense? It worked, okay? But how about the fact that maybe there's an algorithm inside of the social media companies where if you talk about Christianity, if you talk about faith, if you talk about Catholicism, if you are a person of faith and you're sharing in your faith with other people and it's bad to the narrative that's been sold to people for a majority of their lives, those same people who are depressed, those same people who are lonely, those same people who live vicariously through the people they follow on social media, who are afraid to go to church to understand that they're a sacred being living a sacred experience because they don't want to get roasted by whoever they go to brunch with, or they think that engaging in a life of faith is going to turn you into a blank, 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 blank. So, again, that's just the origin story as I know it. Perhaps there are people in this world and people in different versions and levels of understanding in this world that know a origin story that goes far back beyond Catholicism. Perhaps there's somebody who still retained what it was like when they were worshiping, you know, the gods that they were worshiping before they worshiped the one Almighty that we know about now. Are there still people who are operating in that, I don't know, religious way and taking an understanding and believing in a certain thing? Now, I like to use the room analogy. You look at the room you're in, okay? A painter sees it one way, a carpenter sees it the other. The carpet guy looks at it one way, the plumber, the electrician, the real estate agent, the buyer, okay? Or if you're grounded and you're stuck in the room, you're going to look at that room all in a different way, the same room, the same way, the same different way. Okay, so that we should be looking at all information in all forms and all ways to see what really is there as we inspect it, and we should not, instead of labeling half of possible information as deplorable or as less than or as whatever, okay, that perhaps we should be open to then all ideas. Exactly did we get to that, and why? Not everybody in this media campaign is innocent, and I believe we're going to see the well, we're going to see Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you what Donald Trump's up to as soon as we come back from this, folks, on Iron Brigade. Sorry, I didn't see the clock, and I'm up against it, and you got one more whiskey in the surfer to go, and then there you go. And then you get to watch, I don't know, every single day we're going to do this. I've got shows coming up on 24/7 Comedy Wednesday at midnight. These are going to drop as I make them. I'm going on tour. I'm going on to Florida. Woo, Wednesday. That's right. Hang on down. Key West Comedy there in Key West. I got shows Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm excited about that. And then winging my way off to Cuba to see if Michael Moore was right about how great it is. Now we're going on a cruise, so that's going to be exciting. I've got my tan ready, and we're going to find out exactly what Donald Trump did yesterday on Twitter. We're going to talk about finally the Nexium case. And why would you have or consider or find the need to own a patent to see if Luciferians can be rehabbed? What? We'll be back. Iron Brigade, everybody. Masha with your bad self. So the mainstream media finally is admitting that some of the information in the dossier got there through nefarious means, which then perhaps nefarious means were used to capture nefarious information, and perhaps real nefarious money was used for real nefarious actions to get real nefarious information to use on an enemy. So, and the same people, there is no comeuppance if you're wrong. So then that's the reality of it. You can continue to say whatever you want. If you're a person of faith, you're going to live one way, and if you're a person of anti-faith, you're going to live perhaps in another, because your origin stories are different, because your continuing stories upon your death will be different. And what we're telling you here on Iron Brigade is that you're going to step into the next change of who you've always been with the same confidence that you're listening to my voice. And the other side perhaps may, well, in fear of them being manipulated. See, that the people who live in the lie-based culture fear being manipulated by the truth. So what they do is they manipulate the lie and create this crazy mess of chaos, because in that chaos that they've created is a lot of room for them to get a lot of work done. So in an overarching idea, that's pretty much what's going on here across the, well, across the media landscape. In fear of being manipulated, they manipulate as people who are rejecting, resisting faith or the fact of what truth is being brought forth to them, in the understanding that perhaps we're all going to experience an origin story together. Perhaps they're going to sell you a story that there's 13 different versions of humans. Could you imagine, in the same way that they sold you a Russia hoax or a Nazi hoax or a 25th Amendment hoax or a continued hoax of what they're selling, how about the fact that could they then sell you that you're, how would you say? And the only reason I have this idea is because whether or not this Nexium case is real, whether or not it's, and I believe Zero Hedge put that out, so, you know, take that for what that's worth. But what they said is this guy in the Nexium case, I guess, who hasn't had his day in court yet, and I am very loose, and I'm just kind of watching in the same way I don't have to know the law, I just have to listen to Alan Dershowitz, okay? I don't have to understand persuasion and NLP as much as I do, fine. So, but then you look at the real experts, okay, and you understand, like, okay, I get what they're doing. Does that make sense? All right. So in the same case, this guy who has can Luciferians be rehabbed? What does that mean? Is that a person who is born into worshiping Satan? Is that what a Luciferian means? And why don't we know? Why don't I know? Because it wouldn't matter based on what the information is, because you're going to act in the same manner. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I'm trying to make it simple. I'm trying to make all of this simple. It's all available, and it's all here now to live your faith and to live a life of amazing decisions with the trust in Christ that's ever available in as much mercy as you give. With the trust in Christ that's ever available in as much mercy as you give, you then will receive. And that's the order of operations in a world that wants to manipulate you into fear, into pointing the finger, to do the devil's work, like we said, of being the accuser. Okay? So in this sense, what this guy's patent is, and they said, we take a Luciferian, we give them a stimulus, and if they react to a stimulus one way, we give them another stimulus, and if they react to that stimulus that way, then based on how they react back to that, we'll know whether or not they can be rehabbed or not. And if you've watched that Going Clear show, where they hold whatever those metal things are, where am I? They hold those things, right? And they have a conversation with you, and if you hit a pain point in your life where, you know, for whatever reason, a current thought that you have about your past is 100% equal to the negativity that you experienced in that, because you've memed it, you've relived it so many times, you've Russia hoaxed yourself that your past is now present here in your current future, which is putting you at a state of anxiety or a state of unease leading to dis-ease, and all of a sudden you're holding these things, and as you come to terms with whatever that thing is, okay, then you're giving off different electricity through the electrodes. And so it sounds like Scientology based on the very, very, very minimal research I have, other than writing it down on this board, okay? But it would make sense that if you had the elaborate idea of a hoax to have people, you know, start finger pointing and you're a bot, you're a Russian, you're a whatever it is. Okay, remember, we're Americans coming together for the good of America to take care of our friends, family, relatives, and citizens here in this country. And then from that place of growing in strength, we can work with other countries to assist them. But in seemingly what we're doing in the state of getting workers into here is we have some people who are foregoing certain laws in order to continue the business that they've been running. So if this guy thinks that there's Luciferians and you know, whatever you've studied about ancient religions and the way that they would do sacrifices, and if you know that there's knowledge that's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old of how they engaged in those religious practices and what all it entailed, if there were people that lived like that and they were living their whatever they were doing. You got the blood sacrifice in the backyard. Who brought the owl? I don't know how it works, okay? I just know that well, how about this? If you understand the power of the Holy Spirit being present in water itself, turning into holy water, okay, then that same capacity for blood would then hold the same because it was water before it was blood. Does that make sense? So what one thing has capacity for as it moves into the next thing, if it already had the previous capacity, it can be that thing. So the very water that we are as a creature filled with the Holy Spirit in its fullness allows us to be here gratefully. But if you didn't have that very idea, you might believe that there's a war inside of you, and then your reactive way negatively outwardly is your inner ability to wage your own war of division, which is not happening. It's a lie you're telling yourself, and then anxiety is based on that, or it's been based on the fact that you've been manipulated because you're in a 97% automatic programming, because you have not done the semantic work. And I use the word semantic because when the AI goes out and gets information and gets the words back, it only uses the words as they are. It doesn't have emotion added to it. And it doesn't have anything in its processing that slows it down because it's using a straight line to go get. So then are you sometimes using a curved line of lie to defend something? Does that make sense? And in as much as you can be that straight line, to be that truth itself, then what? You line up at that 220 washing machine plug and bam, you wake up sober. And then from that standpoint, what do you do with that information? You just give. At that point, you're like, I want, you know, folks, get here. Do the work, whether if it's reading about Henry VIII's teachers teaching his kids and how teachers taught the teachers back then, or you want to learn how AI is moving forward, or you want to understand that your very programming is just input, output, and so do so with the greatness and the glory that you've always been and not in a state of fear. And so as this fear-driven information is brought forward, don't be surprised that, you know, they might sell that, you know, there's, you know, if you're who knows? They could split people off by different alien whatever. They could present an origin story that shows that such and such religion at the beginning was the good guy. And from the good guy, something bad happened, and this thousands of years ago, you've never heard about it. And then for whatever reason, how would it go down? The people who were going to believe, and the people who weren't going to believe, weren't going to believe. And as they keep and separate, and they keep taking people who are easily manipulated into doing rash things and making poor decisions, can they get them to the point of doing something negative where the next version of human control from a state standpoint can be introduced? And if you understand that, perhaps, I mean, how crazy, you know, how many Indiana Jones movies you want to go? Are they doing Kali Ma and ripping the dude's heart out and watching it beat? They got the cage lowering the person down into the lava pit. They got fucking bones through their heads. Like, how deep does this go? And what were the rituals like back then? Are they still doing them today? Do they need a supply of materials in order to continue that religious practice? And has that all coming to an end? Or has that all been just a well-crafted psyop on the internet to keep people interested because they're so bored at what they're finding online? Because instead of the information that you're getting piercing your heart in the same way that Christ re-explained his gospel to his believers in that sort of truth that lights you up, perhaps, and I'll invite you to be there and just enjoying being here on Iron Brigade. And that's it. God bless everybody. Thank you for being a part of this and watching. Oh, I did say Donald Trump left up for 20 minutes, according to Brian Stelter's flappy baloney lips, when 138 people were dead in the terror incident in Sri Lanka. At that point, 138 Christian martyrs had been murdered for their faith. At that point, he had 138 million. An accident, and on purpose, with as much thought as Easter worshiper. And do both of those things do the same thing? Does that make sense? Careful of the way that we're being divided as human beings. And that's it. Take care of the elderly. Take care of the babies. Take care of yourself. Take care of the truth. And take care of... Well, to take care, because you had care with you when you went. And so you brought care with you. So then be with care when you pray. For the good of all mankind. And let's see what the next version of this is going to be. I think what we may have experienced, and we're going to find out in the next election, is as much as we have workers and we have immigration and all the issues at the border, what we are bringing in are a huge amount of Christians and Catholics from all over the world. So how is it responded to by a new immigrant who would see the president that was here before they got here not use the word Christian? And how do they, as a people of faith who have made extraordinary, through extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary endeavors to get here, using their faith, guided by their faith, that by God's will they arrived in as safe condition as they made it, to see on Easter, as they celebrated, that people just like them around the world were murdered for the same thing that they're doing there. And they see on social media, or they see on the news that they get, that the response does not reflect how they feel. And how is that segment of the population going to vote? And that, my friends, will be something that we're going to learn and experience, but not until these 30 candidates say one thing through 12 companies to try to overload the impeachment narrative, draw them into a trap to get them to do something bad, and then pile on, and everybody, for their political and legal safety, says, yeah, Trump, you're the witch, and it ends. Or they start uncovering the layers of the onion, and you start to see that perhaps the spice lines that ran through the country and the world at one time, when information and services and goods and things from one part of the world were brought to another, well, perhaps that there are those all over the country and they're not doing things for the best of Americans or the best of humans. There you go. God bless everybody. Iron Brigade, and enjoy. WhiskeyandtheSurfer.com, weaponsgradefaith.com. If you have any questions, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and there you go. God bless. Oh, folks, never stop Iconic Rock. Oh, dude, they're on tour with Hatebreed right now, dude. Dude, stop yelling over John Tardy. A little bit obituary, everybody. Florida's finest. Yeah, go see them, dude. They're on tour right now, dude. Hatebreed 25th anniversary tour. Go get it. Coming to Denver. Gonna be stoked. So what is this guy saying? Has this guy has 95 records. I've never figured out one lyric. It sounds like this guy who got eaten at the Kansas City Zoo. Dear God. Tiger attack. Wait. A tiger attack. Tiger attacks. You know, this didn't happen until Tiger Woods won the Masters. All I'm saying. Tiger attacks Kansas zookeeper after the error brought the two together. Oh my God, did they swipe left? And the tiger was like, watch me swipe right. Oh, swipe your head right off your body. A rare Sumatran tiger attacked a worker at a Topeka Zoo, Kansas on Saturday, wounding the back of her head and her neck before other staff members were able to coax the animal away from food. Oh my God, dude, she already has food. Why are you going to give it more food? Dude, that's the best thing she's ever eaten. Revenge, dear God. Zookeeper was alert and awake when she was rushed to the hospital, listed in stable condition. What did you do to this tiger? Where did this tiger had revenge? The victim, a primary tiger keeper at the Topeka Zoo, was at the The victim, the primary tiger keeper at the Topeka Zoo and Conservation Center, was in the predator's outdoor habitat when she was attacked. Oh boy. Oh no, on the incel web thread on Reddit, they just said she was asking for it. Oh, that is so dastardly of them. Somehow, the 7-year-old male tiger named Sanjeev entered the habitat. Wait a minute. Dude, that's what it sounds like when you're getting digested. Oh my god. When you're getting eaten to death, this thing does not take a 15-minute break. Oh, that's right. You take 15 minutes to break. That's how this happens. Anyways, you're not supposed to be in there if there is a Sumatran 7-year-old tiger in there, but, somebody made a mistake. Some sort of error occurred here, Wiley said after adding the incident was under investigation. Oh, my God. No, dude, I was tired of her eating my yogurt out of the fridge. I bring those in. I'm on a certain diet. I can only have a certain amount of calories, and every time I look up, she's got it. She keeps saying she's going to buy me more, but she never does, dude. And finally, no, you know, I've had enough of it. Anyway, so, yeah, I told her, oh, you know what, look, I got you some yogurt. It's in the tiger habitat. Go get it. I got you a year's supply. She went out there. Some visitors who saw Sanjeev injure the worker who suffered lacerations and punctures to the back of her head, also wounded on her back and arm. After about 10 minutes, other staff members are able to lure the tiger. You're ass kicked for 10 minutes? You're not dead?